Reframed story. This is a type of project that I've been wanting to work on for a while now. Over the years, my little ones have become attached to certain children's books, and I just have such a fondness for the illustrations. I'd love to reframe some of these illustrations to put on our walls. And the first project that I'm going to work on is using this lovely book, Frog and Toad Are Friends by Arnold. It's really sweet. It's great for a beginning reader. The text is fairly simple. So let me show you the supplies that I've got. I've got 2 frames. They're not the same, but they're similar and they're the same size. So this is an 8x10 frame that I purchased from Michael's a few years ago. I think they still carry it, but I'm not sure. It's reclaimed wood, 8x10. I just wasn't using it anymore. And then I just found today this other reclaimed wood frame, same size, 8x10, slightly different style though. So I think those will go nicely together. If you're doing a pair, they don't have to match exactly. So that's what I'm going with. I got this second frame at this great place in San Francisco called Scrap. It's a nonprofit, and they resell donated art supplies, and you can get everything really cheap. It's a great resource. If you're in San Francisco, definitely check it out. If you're not here, look around online. You might find a similar kind of organization in your community. You can donate supplies you're not using anymore, and you can get supplies really cheap. I went a little crazy in the button bin. I spent about $2 and got hundreds of these lovely cream and ivory buttons, all different styles, all different sizes. It was just like a grab bag. So I got a bunch of those. Then I will also be using my trusty glue gun. If you trust a different type of glue to apply things to, like a super tacky glue or something, go for it. Also, I'm going to be using some sandpaper to prep my frames, and of course brushes.
Here's a more complete supply list. Frame or frames, your storybook for the illustrations, sandpaper, tack cloth, acrylic paint, buttons or other decor, glue, varnish, brushes, photo mat, tape, X-Acto knife, and a straight edge or ruler. To get started, you're going to take the backing off of your frame, as well as glass if there is glass in it. And then you're going to use a coarse grade sandpaper to sand the finish off of your frame. Then switch to a finer grade sandpaper to get that surface really nice and silky smooth. Right, and I've got these tack cloths. I'm gonna wipe this down, remove all that dust from the sanding. I just got these at Home Depot. You're gonna repeat the prepping process with your second frame if you have one. So remove the backing and the glass if there is some, and then begin the sanding with your coarse sandpaper like you did on the first frame. And then I switched to the fine sandpaper again to finish off this frame. Again, clean your frame with the tack cloth to remove all that dust from the sanding. now I'm going to put the initial layer of paint on the front of the frame. This is the first coat. Okay, so I've got the front surfaces and then that interior edge. I am gonna wait and do the sides after this part dries so that I can handle it more without worrying about messing it up. Okay, so that's that one. Now that the paint has dried on the front of the frame, it's time to paint the sides. I'm not even going to worry about the back. Nobody's going to see that. So. Okay, now I'm going to do the sides on the second frame. The next step in the process is going to be attaching the buttons to the frame. I chose buttons because it's part of the story that I'm going to be reframing. So whatever illustrations you choose to go with, just pick elements that go with the story. I actually started out last night with putting buttons all over the frame, spaced out a little bit, and I felt like it needed a little bit more asymmetry or rhythm to it. So what I've done here is really clustered the majority of the buttons down at the bottom, and then I kind of spread them out as it drifts up, and then the top doesn't have any buttons on it. And I feel like that looks a little bit more interesting than when I had the buttons all over it. So I'm going to be using my hot glue gun to put the buttons on. I have not glued these yet. I was just kind of playing around with placement and put them on like this on the frame without gluing them. I'm going to just slide this over since I've got it how I like it. I'm going to slide this one over and use it as my reference as I do the other frame, and then I can use this one once I've got it done as my reference for that one when I take everything off and redo it with the glue. And as I go, I'm going to be overlapping a little bit at the bottom. This doesn't have to be perfect, just see what feels right to you. So I decided ultimately to do more buttons on the left side of this one and on the right side of this one, so that as they pair together, it's got a little bit of a flow like this. I'm actually going to paint over all of the buttons now with the same green paint, and then varnish it. And then depending on how it looks, I may add in some green buttons on top. So before I go any further, I wanted to credit another craft blogger and YouTuber. Her channel is Simply Anything, and she's got a really great video I'll link to in my description, where she covers wooden letters with buttons. And what she does, and I've kind of borrowed her technique, is cover the surface with the buttons that you want, then paint it all one uniform color, then put in buttons of a certain color that you want to put on top to let it pop. So I finished making everything green, including the buttons, and then I decided I needed those kind of contrasting buttons to give a little bit more interest to it. So I'm going with some tortoiseshell buttons. I went back to scrap. I got more tortoiseshell buttons from the button bin, and I'm just going to scatter a few in here. I've got about 8, I think, just to give it a little bit more interest. I'm also trying out using tacky glue this time instead of hot glue, because the hot glue sometimes leaves some trails. Okay, I've got a polyurethane here that I'm going to be coating both of the frames in to protect the paint and give it a nice finish. Just stirring that up. I'm trying not to use too much varnish so that it doesn't pool up around the buttons. And then as I get to the buttons, I can pull up and down with the brush to prevent these puddles around the buttons. You do need to be gentle with the brush, because this acrylic paint can pull off of the buttons, especially since if they have a smooth surface. So just be gentle with your brush. Use a soft brush. Take your time. And I'm covering all of the frame and the buttons with this to give it a unified finish. So my varnish has dried, but when I was painting with the varnish, there were a couple of spots where the paint came off of the buttons. I think because they were such a smooth surface. So I'll try to show you, like here. There's some areas where it came off here. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of touch-up. I've finished doing my touch-up paints on the buttons, and I'm gonna do one last coat of varnish just on the front face of the frames. This is the spread that I'm gonna be using for the artwork from the book, and I already cut this side out using an X-Acto knife, and I'm gonna do this side. And I'm gonna try to cut as close to the binding as possible. Just use a sharp X-Acto knife and a straight edge. Make sure that you're cutting on a surface that you don't mind getting damaged, because you might nick it. Okay, so that's cut out and this is cut out. I found that I needed to have a 5x7 opening to view them. That was the right size. So the frames I have are 8x10, but the openings that I need for the mats are 5x7. So I found this nice double mat at Michael's. It's Studio Decor, and it's got a 5x7 inch opening, and it fits an 8x10 frame. It is a double mat, so because of that, I'm not going to be able to use glass on my frame because it would be too thick, but I'm okay with that. So I will not be using glass in the frames. It'll be the mat, the artwork, then the back of the frame. Okay. So I don't need the top part of this mat right now. I just need the bottom part. And to mount the artwork in the mat, I'm just gonna put a piece of tape about 2 or 3 inches long at the top horizontally. And I'm taping it along the back. And I'm leaving about half of it hanging off, like that. Okay. And then I'm going to center the mat over down, and then I'm gonna push down right where that tape is meeting the mat. Okay. Now, make sure it looks how you want. Make sure none of your text or illustrations are cut off. Then I'm gonna flip it over, place it into the frame. Oh, sorry, I forgot this one. This is the front mat. That goes in first. Then this. And then finally my back. Okay. And there you go. Now I'll do the other one. And this one I'm gonna have to cut off that page number, but that's okay. I'm just gonna try to keep the rest of the text and the illustration in. Again, press down here. And take my frame, make sure that you've got the base of the frame along the base of the artwork. Put in my front mat, and the back mat and the artwork. And then the back of the frame. This one has prongs that bend down to keep it in place. Okay, so now I've got my pear.
I just wanted to share with you a few other books and authors whose illustrations I really love. This is a book by Rosemary Wells, and my husband's aunt Sharon gave us a bunch of her kids' books, and we inherited a bunch of these Rosemary Wells books, and they are just so precious, and I love her illustrations. This is Fritz and the Messberry. It's a really funny book. I'm thinking about doing this one next. We also inherited from them the Pea Patch Jig by Thatcher Hurd. This is another great one. And another really funny one. This is King Bidgood's in the Bathtub. And this is by a husband and wife team. Audrey Wood and Dawn Wood, and they have really beautiful illustrations. I think these are watercolor, and really funny text. So anyways, those are just some great authors and books if you're looking for inspiration. I'm sure that you have certain books that are close to your heart, so let that be your guide. I also really love The Little Engine That Could, the original Golden book, so I'm gonna try and find one of those secondhand to use for one of these projects coming up. That one's my personal favorite.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe to this channel for more tutorials on crafting, and check out my Etsy shop for sewing tutorials and patterns. It's etsy.com/shop/atelierjoy.